landscape photography world, a podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. This podcast is sponsored by SyncBack Pro, the professional photographer's tool to keep your images safe. How safe are your photographs? Or to put it this way, how would you feel if you permanently lost some or even all of them? The fact is, there are very real risks in storing your digital images on a hard drive, even if they're backed up to an external device. There's ransomware, hardware failure, file corruption, virus infection, and even accidental deletion or destruction. SyncBack Pro makes this problem go away permanently. SyncBack Pro is the professional photographer's tool to back up photographs, images, documents, and data files. Once set up, it keeps your files safe, quietly and reliably in the background. So if problems occur or disaster strikes, you'll have nothing to worry about. Your photographs will be safe. Which is why it's also the backup solution that I use myself for my own photographs. Take advantage of an exclusive 25% discount today by going to www.backup.sg. This software will never expire, meaning your photographs are safe forever. That's www.backup.sg. Give your photographs the protection they deserve. Jordan Inglee is a photographer, filmmaker and educator based in Portland, Oregon, whose true passion is landscape and nature photography. When Jordan isn't chasing light, he works professionally in touring and corporate live events as a director, camera operator and video engineer. For the best part of a decade, he's been exploring the wild beauty of nature through landscape and nature photography, creating images that bend the mind and touch the soul. We discuss his strong links between music and photography, how he uses landscape photography to relax from his full-time work in concert and events, and his use of flow state to slow down when he's in the field, and much, much more. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Jordan. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Hey, Grant. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate you taking the time to hang out and talk with me, man. I'm doing pretty good.
That's good to hear. It's brilliant to catch up with you. I've been following you for a little while and there's plenty to talk about, which we'll get into. Let's start, though, with how you got into photography and how you fell into landscape photography, how that bug bit.
Man, what's funny is I was kind of just thinking about this conversation we were going to have today, and I started to kind of like write out a little bit just to give myself some notes, and I realized I've been out of high school for 20 years now.
Wow.
I'm sure you know that feeling, and I'm like, geez, like it's been a minute, it's been a while.
It's been a little bit longer for me. It's probably coming up for 35 years, I think. Something.
I know, man, it's crazy, but it's it's good to reflect upon those things sometimes, because like we're all on our path and like,
absolutely.
Thinking about like how I'm kind of here and why I'm here. Like I've always been behind a camera. Like I grew up in a house that was very technologically savvy in the 80s and 90s.
Sure.
My parents always had cameras in the house. We had video cameras and VHS and Betacam and Polaroids, and I used to run around with the Polaroid camera all the time and take pictures of random things, and it kind of like, what's interesting is like I really found the art of it in college, and it's kind of then where like my life kind of fell into like realizing I could use computers to make art, and I always knew that I wanted to make art, but I was just a horrible drawer, illustrator. And at the time there wasn't a lot more than that, and just kind of photography had always kind of been there. But what really got me behind the camera, at first was like videography and video production, film production. Okay. And I ended up majoring in that in college, and kind of, took that with me into like my first sort of career of like starting to film mainly bands and music.
Okay. Yep.
And music was like, is and will always be also a major thread in my life. And music took kind of like when I got out of school, I started teaching music lessons at a music store. And that's where I started meeting musicians and gaining connections to starting to also like take photos and videos.
Sure.
And that kind of took me, like I ended up after school, I moved from New York on the East Coast of the States to, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And, I moved out in 2007. Geez, 2007
Right.
now. Yep. And that experience of coming out here and seeing like a totally different landscape. And I'm super blessed to be kind of like, I live in a place that people, come here to be tourists to, like my
Yeah.
backyard is filled of like things like this and around me,
Yep.
and I'm, that process of kind of like moving into more of a natural wild area, and then music kind of like took me down the path of photography. And really I spent, I was like a gigging musician and taking photos for about 5 or 6 years. And in 2010, I got together with a group of people and we started doing live streaming of concerts and multi-track audio recording. And this was like 2010, like nobody was even thinking about streaming at the time.
Yeah, it was a pretty rare thing in 2010. Yeah.
Yeah. And even then it was like Spotify was just coming out. So the idea of streaming audio was, before our time. And, it was one of those situations that gave me a lot of experience with camera systems and streaming and mixing audio. And I was taking photos and doing all the social media at the time. And, as that startup kind of fell apart, I found myself working, I got myself a job at a local venue in town that does corporate and large scale events, and shifted, my work life into doing, more corporate stuff. So, things like, large conferences and awards dinners and, all sorts of things in between.
Yeah.
And that kind of like took the load off of me trying to do freelance video and photo work.
Yep.
And that's when I kind of settled more into doing photography as an art form. It's like I had that opportunity to like, okay, the time behind the screen was now for me and not for somebody else.
Yeah, right.
So, and even at that time, I was still mainly shooting concerts and then like dabbling in more nature photography. And, I loved shooting concerts. I think it taught me a lot about reading light. Taught me a lot about reading people's expressions. Taught me how to avoid people at popular lookouts because I had to dodge drunk people, at music venues. It taught me a lot, but once I kind of started seeing nature photography work that was more, I don't know, exciting to me, more magical, more, out of this world. I think that's what drew me even more from like shooting concerts to really honing in on like a passion I had with the camera, and in terms of like nature stuff. And at that point in my life, this is like 2016 or so, in real life career of like live production, I kind of settled into, becoming a video director, and I was doing video systems, camera operation, doing a lot of like LED screens and projection, and that part of my life was really taking off. And that's what kind of just made me kind of not do concert work anymore, because I was constantly around thousands of people. Like at that point, the shows we were doing could be massive and they could be week long. And, I started freelancing on the side doing that work too. And it eventually actually took over. Like I left this job I was at for 5 years and went 100% freelance. Live events. Where are we now? 2017. And that's kind of like when nature photography hit for me, was 2017. and kind of the beginning of this story, this
Yeah.
chapter.
Okay. Let's delve into nature, I guess. What is it about that makes you, it, how is it that doing that makes you feel good? Because for me, and for a lot of the people that I talk to, that's the reason why they do it. It's either a mental health thing or a physical health thing. They're doing hiking, and the photography started off as a thing on the side, and now it becomes the reason for the hike. What is it to you?
Well, man, I I think what it became like a therapeutic thing for me. Like it became, so basically, like, let me start that over. Uh, Nature became a therapeutic thing for me because it gave me an opportunity to be like alone,
Yep.
like, away from people. Like, I hate to say it, like I work in live events, but I'm one of those people that can, like, I'm like introverted and extroverted where I can function in those places, but it drains me. And photography has always been a way for me to recharge.
Yeah.
And, I've always been drawn to nature. And once I like was able to connect like my love of nature and then creating something, I think that's what made like clicked for me. And I think being in a place where, at the time I was starting to travel a lot with freelancing my work, and I had opportunities to like extend my trip or change my flight a couple extra days. So like I find myself in Las Vegas quite often because there's a lot of corporate work down there, or like live event work. So I'd be like, oh, I'll tack on a couple extra days and go to Death Valley. Or if I'm down in San Francisco, I could go down to Big Sur, or, explore Santa Cruz coast. And, so I leveraged those opportunities. And I think that like photography, is and was always an opportunity for me to do something for myself and to have some self-care, through all that. And I still juggle because there is, being a professional full-time photographer is a big deal, like you do anything full-time. It means it's your job. And I've been self-employed now for, 6 years, freelancing and doing side work for lots of years. And anytime any of this stuff, it becomes like all you do, it becomes a lot harder to have like passion for it. So
that's right.
So like, it's been a big part of my life. I think, photography's like music, like I'll never sell my guitar, but I'll never sell my camera either. I've hit a point where photography has fulfilled like the creative part of me and a passion part of me and a natural part of me. And, it allows me to connect to nature better. And it's really such a magical, like, art form, hobby, career path. I mean, I love photography, man.
Yeah, fair enough. What is it, I guess, that makes you want to do it? Do you set yourself goals? Do you have projects? Or is it just that relaxation? Okay, it's time to decompress. I've been under a bit of pressure over here in my life, and I need to just get out there and go and do something for myself.
I think I've drawn, like when I reflect upon it and I look back at my work and like what I'm like into, what I vibe with. And I'm drawn to the same reason why I like live events. And it's like the big show.
Right.
I'm not what you would call like a quiet photographer. My work is not quiet, and I love quiet work, whatever you want to call that. I think
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? And that's great.
Less vibrant, less impactful, less in your face.
Yeah. It can still be all those things and still not what I do. Right. So, but I love, like for me, it's the big show. And it doesn't need to be just like, purple, pink skies and crazy clouds.
Sure.
It needs to like be vibrant and hit you. It needs to be visceral. It needs to have something that like gets you,
Yeah.
And for me, it's like nature. Nature is so beautiful, and it could be captured naturally and still be beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But what's unique to me is like my eye and how I feel like, I love using the camera system and the lensing and those tools to create something that is like magical and different and unique. But as natural as I can, I'm not really a compositor, but I do use like, wide angle lenses to distort things. I use really high telephoto lenses to compress things. So, but I don't know, something like I kind of just want to give like the spotlight to nature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And sometimes to do that, you got to light her up well and, put the lipstick on the proverbial pig, bring it into Photoshop and, paint some happy trees. I got to use how many more alliterations or whatever can I use there? Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, kind of. I guess what I'm interested in is, do you do a lot of planning on your shoots, or do you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been I would say that I used to, and it's been a different ride. Like the last couple years in my photography journey's been less of that. But I used to plan all the time, and now I feel like it's about when it feels right, to go out and shoot, Yep. Though I'm still planning. And I'll say that like I catch myself over planning sometimes or getting super stressed out. I think that's the main thing is managing anxiety.
Yeah.
And like, you've been out, you're like, oh God, what does the one app say? What does this other app say? Oh, but the light's over there.
Yep.
Am I at the right point? Oh God, what's over there? And,
the sun's coming up, but there's a big bank of cloud on the horizon that's not forecast, etc.
Exactly. And I've kind of prided myself over the years to like, take advantage of what you have when you're out there. Sometimes that's not shooting. I have gotten to, working on that Zen photographer of like, sometimes I don't take my camera out, but I won't sometimes.
Sure.
But I also find that like you learn to eventually take advantage of whatever you have when you're at a place sometimes. And if you can walk away with images you're proud of, even if the sky isn't exploding or the waves aren't crashing, that's growth as a photographer.
So being able to take a shot in any kind of conditions is kind of where I see a photographer's growth getting to the point where they're now maturing as a photographer.
Exactly. And like any skill, that you want to learn, you have to have resistance, right? Like you have to practice and you have to be put in uncomfortable situations.
Exactly.
And, teaching music years ago, it's the same idea. If you want to practice something slow and get faster and faster and faster, and you need to practice your scales and, all of that. Or if you work out, you're adding weight constantly. So, getting over like being bummed about bad conditions or something not being 100% right and focusing on like challenging yourself as a photographer, is going to go miles, and that's going to, really make you grow and get better,
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, but for planning, I do find that, if it is nightscapes, there's a lot more planning to it.
I keep an eye. If you want to line that Milky Way up, you got to know where it's going to be at what time. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of those like genres I've shot a lot of, but I don't shoot much anymore. It's more of just,
sure.
There's lots of, pros and cons of shooting nightscapes, but I love them, but it's it's one of those more technical ones, and I've been finding naturally that the more I have to plan that stuff, the less of it being a therapeutic and like rejuvenating experience for me.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
In terms of going into the field with that concept, and then sort of coming away disappointed that you didn't quite get the conditions, or you were doing an astro shoot and the clouds came over and you just had foggy conditions, for example. How do you deal with that disappointment where you have actually made that plan, you've got that image in your mind? Is it, I'll come back next time and that's it, or do you? I guess, how do you deal with it?
I think nowadays I push myself to find other images, other photos to be made. I also like try to like enjoy being in nature too, like enjoy just being on the edge of the lake, overlooking the thing, hearing the waves, whatever it is.
Yep.
That's a harder one, of course, especially if you're like spending money and time traveling, it's a first time to Iceland and it's just rainy the whole time, whatever, I get it.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to deal with, but man, I feel again that like I try to find other images I can shoot, pull out a different lens. If it's like a nightscape thing, like what you're talking about, there's other opportunities to be had. If there's clouds moving in the sky, I like to do a lot of, low level lighting. So clouds and other things can give you other opportunities to light it differently or do something like that. And then there's always I remember this spot. This was a scouting mission. I'm just gonna, have a beverage and enjoy myself and, come back next time,
Yeah. I think that enjoyment of nature is one of the skills that, and I call it a skill because it's something that you can learn, because there's a lot of people that wander through natural environments, and to me, I can't see how they can be enjoying it because they're walking around with their nose in their phone, or they're walking around with a boombox listening to, thrash metal or whatever it is that they're listening to. And you kind of go,
or even their faces behind their camera the whole time.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I mean, it can be just as bad if you're staring through your wide angle and you're at
absolutely
the most beautiful viewpoint ever.
Yeah,
right?
they're spending more time behind the camera than they are actually enjoying themselves. And to me, as I say, it's a skill that's learned. How have you sort of developed that skill for yourself?
Well, I was just thinking as you were saying that I'm just, again, very blessed to live in Oregon.
Yeah, because living in a nice place like that helps. Yeah,
because I mean, my office, I can see the west side of Portland, so I can tell. I open my window, I can see if the clouds are forming or if we're going to get some light.
Sure.
And even here in Portland, we have a West Hills, so I have a couple spots where even if it's like I can just 5-10 minutes down the road be on like a little river with some foliage and a nice view that I shoot regularly as like, it's like my little just go-to spot. But so trying to, I'd be remiss if I was like, oh, it's really easy. Just like, oh man, because I live here. But I feel like it's, like we said, right? It's sometimes putting the electronics away and just being in that moment. And I feel like one of the issues stems from people seeing all this work on social media.
Yep.
Who aren't natural, like people who haven't spent time in nature. Which is fine, right? But it's people don't quite understand also that connection to it yet.
Yeah.
And so you have people go and visit Yosemite National Park or Glacier National Park. They see all these pictures. But they've only ever lived in a city their whole life, or like don't understand, like they're just not connected in that way.
Yeah.
So, and so if you have, photographers who see a picture, they book a flight, they do a thing, it's going to be much harder for them to connect to nature that way.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I feel like, those sorts of situations, I'm a big fan of photo workshops, asterisks, good photo workshops.
Yeah.
They are opportunities to kind of be able to let go and have somebody guide you around, and give you an opportunity to just focus on like photography.
Mm-hmm.
And, or even doing like, non-photography hikes and other things like that, that would help you connect more, let go of the camera for a minute. But it's hard, I get it. People like have, schedules are tight. Like I said, you're traveling a lot. People have to plan and like, if you get one weekend a month and you show up to your spot that you've been dreaming about for weeks and it sucks.
Yeah.
it's a hard pill to swallow,
Yeah, definitely. How would you define success in your photography?
Oh, geez, I have to be like really honest. Like it's not part of my vocabulary.
Okay.
I'm not trying to cop out on you.
No, that's fine. Any answer is a good answer.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that I have compass points, things that are pointing me directions. Actually, there's like 5,000 directions constantly, but are they, I don't know, man. Are they meant for success? I don't even know anymore,
Okay.
I found that I think in my past, success used to equal like engagement, used to equal likes, it used to equal a lot of things that like external factors that I've had to again come to like this Zen, like I have no control over those things anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so those sorts of successes I was imagining dictated what I was doing on social media and what I was doing with my work and
Sure.
what I was doing in my head and what I was doing in my heart.
Yeah.
So I feel like, COVID was a big factor in a lot of changing of brain chemicals. We'll just say that,
Okay.
like the world changed, and whether it was like, macro or micro, and like, I feel like there was a point that even for me, who was working in live events, that being my primary source of income, and doing photography, and I was starting to teach, and I was pushing my photography business at the time. But so to have a world changing event that prevented people from being like next to people when I work in live events, I never thought something like that could occur, right? Like,
yeah, well, it took a lot
wars,
of people by surprise.
Wars, economic meltdown, all that stuff. Like, sure, live events, there's still always like a bar with like people getting drunk, listening to somebody playing an instrument, and you couldn't even do that.
Yeah.
So that was it was a big thing for me. It was like at the time, up until COVID hit, I was flying in 2019. I had 100 flights.
Wow.
Or like 105 flights or something. I was traveling that much. And my career there was doing great, but I was busy. I was gone. And then it was like record scratch. Yeah. And that was an opportunity to reflect, man, so what, kind of coming back around to the idea of like success, like at that point, I didn't even know if I was going to have a job anymore or like my career. I didn't know if we were going to turn into zombies. And like, I didn't know what was going to happen. So I think that was an opportunity to let go of what success was and kind of focus more on like, keeping yourself fed a little bit, And so like now with photography, after all that and kind of going through things, I think for me, it's about releasing work. It's like my new mantra, my new vibe for the year is like produce, not so much produce more work. It's like finish and put out more work.
Yeah, right.
Really, like, and I, I also was super lucky between 2018 and 19. I shot a lot of photos. I'm sitting on years of unedited images.
Mm-hmm.
So like getting back to this idea of like kind of circling back to planning and getting out and shooting, I've been leaning into like processing and working here, getting like the images I've already shot done. There's plenty of work to do there. And I juggle that sometimes. Sometimes it's like, yeah, I could go out and chase the light, have that experience, but I've also now like amassed a lot of work that I'm really proud of that's not done yet.
Yeah.
And I take my time with my work. I let it marinate. I like to smoke my meat, not microwave it,
Okay.
So yeah, that's long answer short, or yeah, that's
as I say, any answer is a good answer.
Yeah, man.
In terms of, I guess, that expressionism in your art, or the expression of an emotion, what is the primary emotion that you're trying to express with most of your images, or does it depend on the image and it's just different every time? I feel that there is a primary one, but I'm not going to tell you what I think until.
Oh yeah, okay. I want to. Yeah, I love to hear it. I think sometimes it's excitement.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times when like the images that I'm releasing, like 90% of the time, my excitement behind the camera is just jubilant. It's all over the place. Either inside or outside. I've been known to curse and yell when I've seen certain things happen naturally before me. So I think maybe that's the first one in my head is like excitement or something like that, like, wow, look how beautiful nature is, or wow, look what, look at this show she's putting on. So but yeah, man, I think that's kind of the first place I go. And like I said, I'm attracted still to the big wide angle, like expansive, unique views.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's interesting because like it also comes from my photographer, like concert photography world, where like most of my work was either fisheye, really wide angle, bands, lights, crowd, people having a great time, or
the whole scene.
I used to 70 to 200 fingers on fretboards, expressions small. Like, so now in my nature work, I'm like
individual sweat beads dripping down the face.
Yeah, man. So to me, that's like the equivalent of like ultra wide fern in front of a waterfall, or macro, or really tight, compressed, more abstract stuff. And that's where I love to be in my work. And to me, that's kind of like extrapolating this almost psychedelic, almost, otherworldly thing that is naturally occurring. It's all around us. Of course, again, utilizing the tools we have to like really get that point across. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, you pretty much know what I was going to say, particularly with the wow. It's like, wow, check out what I'm able to see. Check this out. Don't you wish you were?
Well, that's the beauty of photography, right? Is that it is kind of it's kind of a selfish / egotistical art form. It's like,
absolutely.
Look at what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
And I think that's, to me, what's really powerful behind it. It's how I see the world in a frame, in a single square, rectangle, whatever you want it to be. This is how I see the world right now. Look at it. Look at this photograph. Oh my God. That's like that meme. But yeah, I feel like it's almost our responsibility in a lot of ways, or it is a responsibility, if I could rephrase that, as a photographer, that it is how we are choosing to show people the world. And
absolutely. Yeah.
I love to hear that I kind of got that across to you,
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, man.
You mentioned you don't do a lot of composite work. Where do you sort of stand with that enhancement of images? Obviously, there's a lot of people, that I guess right into that totally naturalistic. Here's almost a raw file view of the image. Very minimal processing. You said you take a long time in your processing. That sounds to me like you're at the other end of the spectrum, not necessarily adding color and light and other elements, but I guess where do you sit on that spectrum, or where do you feel you sit on that spectrum?
I it's been a moving target over the years. I think currently one of my main threads in that conversation is mainly about, if it couldn't happen, I don't want to do it.
Yep. So no Northern Lights over Big Sur,
the southern skies. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. When I do my nightscape work, sometimes I'll shoot the Milky Way separately, but from the same location, and it's natural and it can happen, because I don't want to lie to anybody.
Yeah.
I don't believe in lying. Like, lying is a strong word, but people have the responsibility, again, to be honest about the work they're putting out.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of my main bit. Like, I've grown some great relationships, especially the last couple of years in Web3 with composite artists, who I, have grown to really respect more. And I've been able to open my mind a little bit beyond what is just photography and, and art forms. But they're people who are like, they call themselves composite artists, they're not like
digital artists.
Not like, And they're also people. So I know some people like Kath Samard who like literally hike mountains to get the bits and pieces. Like, yeah, sure, her image might be composited, but
it's not lazy
and effort and time. Exactly. And that's a big one for me too about things, is to not be lazy.
Yeah.
I think that's why my work takes so long. Less about perfection, more about not being lazy. Like, if I'm going to take the time to clone out one dust speck, I better do them all, because that's just being lazy if you don't.
Exactly.
I think that's kind of, I was like brought up that way, don't sweep it under the bed. Like, why do a job if you're not going to do a job well? Don't do it at all.
Yeah.
So for me in processing, that's the reason why a lot of times it takes lots of time. And it's, I try to decipher it between creative vision and like technicalities. Like, I try not to get perfection and all of that wrapped up in the creative bit. Do my best. It's hard sometimes, but it's more so technical stuff, right? Horizon lines, edge lines, it's like, man, if you're going to spend the time, like, I want it to be technically perfect. I think that's more of a real thing I look for, and is a constant goal to be technically perfect. Yeah. And that's just like any other skill in life, right? Like, if you play guitar, or you're, tennis player, or climber, or hiker, there's perfection in technical skills that.
Yeah. You've got to put the hours in to get that technical capability.
Exactly.
To let your natural talent then shine through.
So in processing and getting better at it, that's kind of always where, the beginning of my processing journey starts,
Yeah. Okay. In terms of where you live, how you shoot, what you shoot, and also a little bit about how you process, which is the most important to you in terms of what drives the other? So is it where you live drives what you shoot and therefore how you shoot, or is how you want to shoot drives where you live and then drives what you want to shoot?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, I would say, I feel like I'm lucky to be in the location I'm in. And I've lucky been able to travel and kind of live a fairly, non-expensive life. I've prioritized certain things in my life, that have given me opportunities to go to a lot of these places. Um, I, there's a chance that I won't always be here in Oregon my whole life. As we get older, you start to realize those things sometimes. And,
Yep.
um, you know, for me, I would love to make a choice. Like that would be the dream, the like retirement, quote unquote, would be me
Yep.
being able to make a conscious choice to like move somewhere strictly for photography. Oh yeah. I already know where it is. It's like central southern Oregon coast.
Okay. Yep.
It's on the coast. I love the ocean.
Yeah.
I need to be driving distance from the ocean. So I guess that maybe kind of answers your question a little bit, is I need to be able to like drive to the ocean, wherever I live. So like Utah, it's beautiful, desert, Arizona. I like to visit, but I love it in the Pacific.
You don't want to live
Northwest.
there.
Yeah, no, I don't want to live there. No. It's like gray and rainy.
Yep.
My skin isn't dry. There's all sorts of benefits, and the Pacific Ocean is just, I could shoot only that my whole life, man. And I could find everything I would ever need to shoot up and down the Oregon coast, and I'd be happy,
Okay.
Yeah.
I
know you love the seascapes, right?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely a seascape guy. If I don't regularly get knee deep in salt water, I've got a real problem.
Yeah, man. It's something that a lot of people don't like get to experience.
Yeah.
And it's a different type of shooting.
Very much
standing on like an edge cliff looking over like a valley's great and all, but you get on, I don't know if you wear any sort of like gator or waders or like socks or anything, but
I've got a set of rock shoes which have got like they've got little cleats in the bottom,
studs on them. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so they're made for rock. I have an affinity with rock fishermen, so we get a lot of people here around.
Oh, that's cool.
The coast that go fishing, and quite often they're the only other people I see at pre-dawn, because they're out there trying to snag a meal or whatever. I'm out there trying to snag a bit of light, and so I've got those. They're like neoprene rock boots, and
that's great. Yeah,
nice.
I'm jealous. That sounds. I remember those days of like having a little place that you could go to, and the only other people there were like a local, who was like fishing or something. And I mean, there's still some nooks and crannies around me, but those are the days, man, where you could still have those little secret spots. I'm sure that's why I want to live on the Oregon coast, because then I'll have those spots too, right? Where the tourists
That's
aren't.
exactly right. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of places I can go where I can find people if I want to. Yeah, there's always There's always early morning job.
Are you in? You're in Australia or New Zealand?
In Australia, in
Australia.
Sydney. So
in Sydney. Oh man, yeah. It's been a dream of mine to get down there one of these days.
You should come over. It's worthwhile.
I've actually what's beautiful thing about Web3, and like I've grown some great relationships with a lot of other artists, photographers all across the world, more so than any other social media that I've ever had. And I've grown good friendships with people down there. And it's like really cool to get that vibe and your guys' culture and things in the mix. And again, I'm in like DM threads with people across different time zones where it's like people are tagging off like, all right, see you later, United States. And then like the Aussies come in, talk a bunch of shit all night. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but it's my first one. I'm actually surprised. I'm usually a potty mouth. So, but I'm envious. I've since I was a kid, I always wanted to visit there. Can't lie, it was probably Crocodile Dundee that made me want to go down that street.
Well, I got to say, a lot of that is sort of frowned on by Australians. They look at it and go,
I'm
"Yeah,
sure I've realized you don't want to go down there and be like, where's Peter? What's his name? I forget. It's a national treasure, isn't he? I don't know.
yeah." But
I don't want to get beat up by anybody.
No, that's right. I mean, if you do get down here, hit me up, and we'll definitely find a little seascape spot. There's a couple of little beaches I know. They sometimes get crowded, but sometimes you can get there and you're the only person on the beach, and
the beauty. I mean, I don't know about you, but the beauty of seascapes is like you don't need a lot. You don't need iconic things to shoot seascapes a lot of the times. And this is me being lucky that I have the coast here and I have lots of options. But the reality is some of my most favorite crazy wide angle shots were a couple stones in a foreground with something in the background and some good light and a wave.
Yeah.
And that was like nowhere near a popular spot. Right.
Yeah.
And water creates such unique compositions. You can come away with 100 different images that you're like, that could be, bangers, as they say. So
I got a hard drive full of
exactly.
bangers to be, I call them.
Yeah. And you know how it goes. Like you get a great composition and you can just lay on the shutter and every wave, turn, move is a new image.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of those, like, of course you want to go see icons, but the coast is changing all the time. That even those icons are a lot different than the last time you were there because of erosion and waves and whatever.
You go there at say 6 to 8 weeks apart, and the tides have changed, so everything looks different in high tide than it does in low tide, and the mid tides look different to either of those. So
I think it's why I'm so drawn to it, and like and other colleagues, friends who are into seascapes, like. It's always that it's just a different, there's so much dynamics there. There's so many, it changes so much that it's hard to get sick of. And like, I'm buddies with Nick Page and I've done I did a workshop with him. Like I went on one with him on the Oregon coast and then helped him co-lead one once. And I've dipped in because like he always throws one near my birthday and I usually go on a coastal run on my own. And you talk to him and like he's taken people to these spots for years and years that like every year is different. Yeah. Every year is unique. Even he is somebody who never gets bored with it either. And like, so I love seascapes and I love that as like I love being able to introduce people to that too, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. Who
have never even seen the ocean, who are photographers. And I'm like, God, you got to come here,
Yeah.
And then we can go to a mountain and a river and a
waterfall,
a bunch of other things. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I like where I am. I'm kind of, I'm about an hour's drive from the sea, but I'm also slightly less than an hour's drive from some of the nicest waterfall country here in the district.
That's awesome.
I can pick and choose depending. If it's raining, I don't go to the beach. I go to the waterfalls. If it's looking like a sunny day, I'm down at the beach. So
yeah, it's pretty. It sounds very similar to here in Portland, this part of the Pacific Northwest, man.
Yeah, not quite the same dramatic changes in weather though. We do.
They used to be more stable, but climate change and things.
Yeah, that's it.
Weirdness.
We don't get a lot of snow. Though occasionally up on the Blue Mountains, which is that waterfall region I was talking about, we do get the odd. It's a dusting,
It's a crazy experience because I remember the first time I moved out here from the East Coast and went up to Mount Hood, our main volcanic mountain over here, and in August put my feet in snow for the first time, or if I guess for you that'd be whatever your peak of summer is. So, and it was like, wow, I've never experienced something like that. It's pretty wild, man. It's really, really blessed to be out here. I will only leave here if I have to.
Sure.
if you know what I mean.
What's your most memorable shooting experience?
One of my most memorable images, huh? It's a really hard one. I think I have to go with this image, Howling Dog's Throne.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually, it was the first time that I actually got to meet Nick Page.
Okay.
And I was on a workshop with him. And this image, like this experience of seeing, like, let me kind of set the story here. We had been out shooting waterfalls all day, and it had been really overcast and crappy out. And we were about half an hour inland. And it was like, okay, guys, like, let's pack it up. Let's start heading back, trying to get sunset. And everybody, it was like really kind of bummed the location of this place. Here I am knocking icons, and now I'm like talking about an iconic location as being one of my most memorable images.
Sure.
But this place, Bandon, Oregon. And so everybody was, really excited, and it was really gray, and everybody was really bummed. And then we got to the location just as the clouds were breaking enough on the sky, that the sun started to peek through. And there's another image I have called Rise, and I actually released 3 of these images shot the same night as as one of my, one-on-one NFT drops. And this first image, Rise, is actually the conditions that we had walked up to. And I had never, it was one of those, wow, I couldn't even really think of what to do when I first saw the skies at this point.
Yeah, right.
So this image, Howling Dog's Throne, though, this was one of those images that I was verbally excited about. Definitely dropped many F-bombs, and the sky just kept morphing and changing, and the reflections were shimmering and moving, and it was just this experience of being with a couple other people too, that I think helped that memory be something even more, it was something that all of us had, a couple of us have been there numerous times. This was like the 3rd time I'd been there, but the first time out with Nick. And it was like, I had always wanted to go to this place, but this situation of everything lining up, having the perfect amount of water in front of it, reflecting, and the sky, I have so many images from this night. But this one for me was kind of just, was the cream of the crop in terms of I've never seen conditions like this before at this location ever since. Now, I'm sure there are others like it, but this one's mine. This is my memory.
Sure.
So yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with this is 2018. I really started to settle in as seascapes and shooting the ocean, shooting the sea.
Yep.
That's when I really the passion really started to form. And this trip had a big part in that. And Nick had a big part in that in my photographic path.
Cool.
So I guess, yeah, that's one of my most memorable photos. There are so many more.
Yeah.
It's cool to have an image like that as a creator be able to bring you back. And I feel like I do spend some time, sometimes I open up Lightroom and just scroll back through old catalogs or old collections, or, and I'll just look at them just kind of more like a memory based thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my editing process sometimes too. Some days I kind of like to go to, we have, with thrift shops. I don't know if you have, I'm sure you have, sorry, I'm not talking like a third world country, but thrift shops, right? Where you I'm going to go shopping, but I don't know what I'm going to get.
Yeah.
Right. So, a thrift shop, you go in and you're like, ooh, pair of boots that fit me. ooh, look at this blender that I've always wanted that works.
Yep.
Sometimes that's my editing like flow is like I'll open up Lightroom, look at my catalog, and kind of find something that like tickles my fancy, you know, like something that I want to sink my teeth into a little bit. And
Yeah, that's cool.
and like I spend a lot of time organizing. Also, I wouldn't say time, but I put a lot of effort in building dynamic collections in Lightroom. Lots of filtering, lots of things. I have like a editing queue. I'm very workflow oriented, even though when I actually get down and do it, I'm very fluid. So I kind of like, I build workflows for myself so I can let go when I want to actually create.
Yeah. Right.
And I think it's kind of goes back to my life, you know, it goes back to my experience playing and teaching music. It's this idea of like improvise, like if you want to improvise music and you want to, you know, solo or play jazz or do whatever, right? Like if you want to create music on the fly, you spend all this time practicing, doing scales.
Yeah. You need to understand the music to be able to, and how to make it to be able to improvise and take it to the next level. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I have some very, no, I wouldn't say rigid workflows, but structures that I've built on my process from shooting to export.
Yeah.
That I lean on, and it allows me to have less anxiety about editing.
Yep.
It allows me to like, okay, if I have an urge to do a certain type of work one day, I know what folders or what work I have in the editing queue that I can kind of like work on, you know?
Yeah. I guess talking about the workflow, is there anything in particular that you might do that you think might be different to others? And if so, why do you do those? If it's not different, I guess what does the workflow look like? For example, if you've just turned up at one of your favourite spots and off you go, what are you looking for? What are you thinking?
Oh, okay. So, you know,
where are you going to put your tripod? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my workflow in the field has a lot to do with trying to observe light. I think the first goal is like looking at how light is hitting things in the background, midground, foreground. Kind of like trying to anticipate where it's going to be. You know, to try to plan and start to look for compositions. And then once I find, you know, a couple compositions I'm into is kind of when I start to pull the camera out. Depends how late I am. If I showed, you know, if I'm just like, oh God, I got to pull the camera out and start shooting, but I try not to. I try to like walk around, look at things, calm down, you know, breathe a little bit. Cause usually you're excited. You're like, oh God, I can't wait to, you know,
look at this in front of me. I want to show that to somebody.
Exactly. So calming down, finding your, you know, I'm a big proponent of flow state. You know, if you've ever looked into flow state or heard people talk about it, but it also comes from music. I think it comes from my time playing and improvising and being in a state where your brain is like fully receptive to everything, and being in a state where creating is like a dopamine hit almost. Yeah. It's like, and when you can like leverage all parts of your brain, like memory, you know, mechanics and creativity, like it can stimulate you. And I think, that is always like the dragon that's being chased in the field. I feel like, trying to be calm, but also trying to flow and trying to like move with things and try to pay attention. And as you know, shooting seascapes, like you have to keep your head on a swivel. You have to constantly be looking. If you're shooting near water ever, you know, I have lost gear, almost lost my life. I've seen people get, you know, it's, you can you can, like, you need to pay attention when you're shooting near dangerous things like that. And I feel like being able to like center yourself and just calm down and take a moment to like walk around is a very big part of my like workflow like that. And then when it comes to shooting, I'm like, I I'll say, I don't do it all the time, but if I'm shooting more wide angle shots, tripod type, my typical style of work, I'm shooting for exposures and then I'm shooting for focus stacks, and I always shoot them in the same order. You know, I try to like get my base exposure and then make sure I'm not clipping my highlights. If I need to get some more shadow detail, I'll take another exposure. And then if I'm going to focus stack, you know, go get my closest shot, rip through the shots and then review them. Yeah. And then if it's like a situation with like seascapes where you're not so much focus stacking as much, you're taking a bunch of water shots. You know, I'll try to not beat the dead horse and try to like take enough that I feel really good about and then move on and explore. But I try to like have that process. So I'm not fumbling with my camera. I'm not spending too much time doing, and I'm spending my energy and like self creating, you know, which goes back to like taking the time at home, getting comfortable with your equipment. I remember back when I first started shooting, like I'd spend so much time in the lab, just pulling a camera out on a tripod next to me on the computer, looking, hitting buttons, taking pictures, and like taking it out to my, you know, exactly. And this is me thinking like a musician, or thinking like really even in my live event world and the skills that I'm doing, it's all about repetition and comfort. You know, you don't want the instrument, the tool, the paintbrush to get in the way of creating. So
being able to, you know, use your equipment in the dark. So when, you know, even down to where you put your filters, I have a 4 or 5 pocket filter bag, and every time I take a filter off, it goes back in the place it came out of, so that I know tomorrow morning when it's dark, I can go to that pocket and that filter will be the right one.
Well, you hope it's there.
I hope it's there. Yeah.
That's my problem. Is I'm like, I knew it was there. But I was gonna say too. I am exceptionally anal about my pack. Not so much. Like more so, like I put a lot of energy into how, what, where, when, and how, why. You know, where everything goes. Yeah. And I've been using f-stop packs for years, and I have multiple inserts for different things I'd be doing. And I used to do a lot, like I used to do more time lapse. I was do videos sometimes. I have different packs, different kits to bring with me. Yeah. Right. But like, it's all about like repetition and keeping things in a structure form that don't need to be creative, right? Yeah. Like you don't need to waste your time being creative, setting up your pack every day, you know, like, so spending the time, finding that works for you, going out and shooting, and then taking that time. Like when we talk about workflow, the most important part is kind of doing some debrief on what you just went through. So that's where it's like getting your images, culling them. Like I cull most of my images, or at least start rating stuff as fast as possible. Yep. And then they'll sit forever. Excuse me. But like with the, you know, getting these non-creative, like annoying things into personal workflows, will make you grow as a photographer faster than you can imagine.
Absolutely.
And it will make photography be more fun, and you could be more creative if you do like boring, uncreative stuff at other times. Right. So exactly. It's that same idea of like, you want to do a triple Lutz. Well, you got to go a double Lutz first. So,
yeah. Well, you got to nail the sink first, and then the double.
Yeah, you got to be able to ice skate first. So, you know, or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm a work, I taught a couple, taught a couple digital courses during COVID about workflow, and it's kind of one of my more like I haven't been able to work on it much this year, but it is maybe another one of my 2023 goals is like, I want to actually put out some classes and courses about this idea of workflow.
Yeah.
And this idea of creative flow and how they're like intertwined, and like how to find flow state by doing rigid, repeatable workflow things, cause
absolutely.
I think the magic is when you're out with people and people get to experience that first time of being completely in the zone, as some say, the true flow state. It's just a magical experience. And, I just hope people get to, you can experience it in all places in your life once you understand how to recognize it.
Absolutely.
So you can be in the zone doing dishes. You can be in the zone vacuuming. And once you start to see those points in your life, I feel like it also, to me, it was life changing. It was one of those, it actually, what kind of put me on to flow state was, listening to a podcast with Alistair Ben. I think is the first time I heard about it. And then again, I heard about it with, Guy Tal. I could listen to him talk so much. And he just gets me excited about creating, to hear the almost like mathematical science interpretation of it. I don't know what it is about it, but like it just jazzes me up to like think about thinking like that, And it was in 2020 where I was like, COVID had hit. I kind of was in that point of like lockdown where I was like, well, I've eaten everything. I played all the video games. I've done all the things. Now
I finished Netflix.
Yeah, I found the end of Netflix even. Now what do I do? And I started working on my website. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to finally build my own website from the ground up. And I spent most of 2020 doing that. But I also was like, I was having issues being productive anymore. It was in that point where I was just like, okay, I need to put on real pants and do something.
Yeah.
But I couldn't. And then I found, I heard about this and I started researching a little bit about flow state. And then I found this podcast that's called Flow State. That is the guy who produces it is a DJ music producer. And he's also studies philosophy and psychology.
Cool.
And essentially he puts together, his podcast is based around this thing called the Pomodoro method. Have you heard of that before?
I have heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's this concept of doing 15, 30 minutes of like focused work. And 5-minute breaks, right? Or some amount of like fixed amount of breaks. So the idea is like turn off all distractions, all screens, except for the task at hand and focus on that. And what he does is he produces musical playlists to help drive you through that work session.
Yeah, right.
And in between the breaks, he talks about people who write and study flow state and other sorts of topics like that. And he's a very like well-worded person. And he has turned me on to other writers and other podcasts and other ideas. And that was a point where I started to see how, we have these cycles of you can focus on a specific task at hand.
Yeah.
And you have to be clear about the tasks and you have to put the effort into like do the pre-production, as we say.
You got to know what you're doing when you start.
But you need to be challenged enough. You need to have enough, like, you don't want it to be too easy. You don't get into flow state by things being simple. They need to be hard enough for you to feel like you accomplished something. But not so hard that you can't, because then you get frustrated and now you're not in flow state anymore.
Exactly.
So yeah, man, I mean, I feel like even the other day I was listening to a podcast with Guy Tal and I hear this guy talk and I just love, he gets me excited about photography and creating differently than any other photographer.
Awesome.
And his work is amazing too. and it's a whole other thing. It's like, it's cool to be that, to get that excitement from something other than just somebody's work.
Absolutely.
And I hope one day to hit that point for somebody, to be able to have the work and the art, I don't know, or stand on their different things.
Well, I learned something from you this morning. So I was looking through your Twitter feed for a couple of hints on something to ask you about, and one of the things that jumped out at me was a recent tweet that you put up about negative ions and their beneficial impact on people, and the way that waterfalls and ocean spray and all the rest of that contains these negative ions. Talk to me about that, because it just sounds interesting. And I know a lot of people might think, oh, yeah, it's just pseudoscience and all the rest of that. But I guess I'm interested to know more.
Yeah. So this new project I've been working on, negative ions, something I'm just releasing tomorrow. I'm not sure when this podcast comes out, but it's mid-January. And I got turned on to the idea of like negative ions from an old photographer friend I used to follow on Instagram. And, it was one of those, like, this idea that waterfalls can be healing, but there's actually like science behind, and this is me speaking as a non-scientist, but there are science behind and physics behind the idea of how molecules could be ionized when they're physically slammed into each other. And so situations like, or scenes like waterfalls and waves crashing and water is a big source of this, because they're simple molecules, and, it's easy for them to lose an electron, which essentially that electron attaches to an air molecule and then makes that molecule the actual negative ion. So it's like negatively charged, and it attaches itself to heavier ions and heavier molecules and makes them fall to the ground, and in which case filters the air around it. And it's one of those, like, no duh, right? Like if you've ever gone to a waterfall and a little stream or anything, big one, small one, usually feel pretty good. And there's probably many reasons why, right? Like whether it was a walk or just being out in nature, all these things. But for me, this topic of negative ions is giving me like a creative thread to release, different sets of images that are going to kind of just be related to this concept of negative ions, but not all be the same style or type of image.
Yeah.
So, this first set of images are all waterfalls. And I'm lucky to have a lot of waterfall images where I live. So I'm releasing a total of 5 images, and they're in different quantities, different supplies for people.
Yeah.
And each one represents a point in my life where I had kind of experienced, the therapeutic benefits of being like in nature at that waterfall.
Yep.
And the beauty of being a nature photographer is that we usually get to experience these phenomenon with our camera. So it again seems like a great opportunity to like have a creative theme to release work for. And most of the work's already been shot. It's more so organizationally allows me to finally have, like, I don't put out a lot of images anymore unless there is a theme or some story behind them.
Yeah, right.
I don't post a lot on most of the social medias anymore unless I have something to say. And that's been kind of a process of me letting go of having the engagement and I want to, the work I put out, I want to have intention behind it.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it's a fun project I'm working on. I'm like, it's been so much work to put together a successful drop in Web3 and NFTs, like, especially considering the market and where we're at. And like, it takes a lot to pull them off, and I'm hoping it goes well. starts tomorrow, but I put a lot of effort in, again, like I said, the intention behind what I'm doing with my work and to try to make the art be the number one priority.
Yeah. Got it.
But it's kind of like, I go back to music, writing songs, coming up with an idea, and you could write a simple song with a sentence, but you kind of want to, you want to flesh that out, or you want to elaborate on that. And there's something to be said, or even if you look at it like songs on an album, it's maybe more of a better example of like, yeah, you listen to one song, but you can't beat like a great album. You can't beat
there's
the
always
effort, like somebody puts in the effort to choose which songs go where. And, a lot of times an album, there could be 20 tracks and they make it 7. Yep. Right. So to me, I think it's one of the things I've really enjoyed in Web3 art for me has been a push to come up with an idea of a collection. And I know people have been doing this in galleries forever. I just have not been a successful fine art print salesperson. I've had more success in digital art. And coming from the dredges of Instagram and Facebook, like I've been able to now have a platform to put together work in different forms like that. And have it mean something a little bit more than just being like pretty picture.
Yeah. Cool. How do you handle hitting creative walls?
Oh, I think the creative wall thing, one of the biggest breakthroughs I had was the flow state example I was talking about earlier, like figuring out a way to work through efficiently blocks is really important, especially when you need to get stuff done, right?
Absolutely.
When it's a passion thing, it's a little harder because there's no deadline. There's nobody like poking you saying, I need you to be more creative and productive, Jordan, but finding a way to like workflows for me, I lean back on them to help get through ruts and blocks, and being able to figure out a way to practice finding like a flow state with your work will, again, like if you can get away from the anxiety of creating, if you can take the tools and get them out of your way, you're good enough with the paintbrush, like it's not there anymore. And then all you're left with at that point, hopefully, is the ability to create. But this isn't always possible. Sometimes it takes stepping away. Sometimes it takes, there's like longer threads in the story too. Right? I feel like in short term, there is creative blocks that happen that you can like deal with. But in a longer story, it's more of an ebb and flow where in some points in my life, I'm very productive. In some points in my life, I'm very creative, So I've learned to lean on them. I'm like, I kind of take my temperature and go, oh, why can't I process images right now? Oh, it's because I need to get outside and make them. And vice versa. Sometimes it's like I'm totally jazzed and stoked on editing, or like I know I need to focus in that zone, and I can tell, not all the time, but I can tell as I get better at this where my vibe is at.
Good.
And a lot of times it comes down to like when you acknowledge that you're hitting a wall, that's where you do something else, right? Or
I think that first step of recognition is critical, because if you don't recognize it, you kind of just run into them.
What do they say about addicts? First step to recovery is admitting you have a problem, I guess. Absolutely. Or whatever.
I definitely have a problem. Photography is an addiction.
Oh, it is.
And sometimes an expensive one.
It can be, it is its own sort of dopamine hit. We can't deny that fact, and acknowledging those things help you, I think, work through, like a lot of times when you hit creative blocks or times like that, they're auxiliary to the actual art,
Yep.
and a lot of times it's maybe you're not skilled enough to work through it. Maybe it's it could be you not being able to make an image look a certain way, or you don't even know where to start with an image. They're all their unique situations. So I would highly suggest people look into, like I said, flow state. This idea, you can check out this podcast. It's really simple. If you're not into the type of music he does, you can always just make your own music playlists, 30-minute music playlists.
Absolutely.
Hit start, do a thing,
Yeah.
Maybe that's, I'm a huge fan of photography tutorials. It's another great way to like break yourself out of a rut, is to start learn a new skill, challenge yourself there, go and support, an artist you really like and go buy their tutorial. And that can really help break me out of a rut sometimes too.
Yeah, totally. Where do you see the future of photography going?
This is where my pessimistic Jordan hat might come on. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard. The future of photography, I hope robots don't take over. That's my biggest one. I'm worried about the.
I have I guess I don't know whether you call it a theory, but a preposition that people will always want to be creative. They will always want to get outdoors, and unless the outdoors becomes so totally unpleasant that you don't want to go out there, then you
might have a robot do it.
You might have a robot do it, but to be honest, for me personally, it's one of the reasons why I haven't bought a drone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the connection.
Yeah, right on.
The connection between being in a place, being able to see that, envision that, and then capture that, take it back, process it in a certain way. For me, putting a robot like a drone or anything else, whether I'm controlling it or it's AI controlling it, it just loses something in my personal opinion. Now, I love drone photography. I think some of it is absolutely fantastic. So I'm not knocking that, but for me, as a creator, I'm sitting there going, it's not what I want to do. Same as I don't want to necessarily go and take wildlife shots or portraits, landscape.
I'm the same way with drones, man. I bought one, shot around. It was fun. It was exciting. Almost crashed it a couple times.
Yeah.
But I realized it took me away from the experience.
It's that separation.
Yeah. And anytime I'm like, okay, get the drone. Can I fly here? The thing is the battery charged. Oh my God. What's that? Okay, that is the antithesis of the shooting experience I want to have.
Yeah.
Like it's already exciting enough. There's already enough stress. And like, I don't want to be worried about if I'm bothering anybody. I don't want to worry, so I feel you. It goes back to, just, finding the thing you're really passionate about, and just leaning into that. Yeah.
But I guess that goes to the point that I think humans will always want to be creative, and therefore
Definitely.
There will always be a place for it, and humans will always want to see. Well, maybe they won't, in the future, and that may be the death of landscape photography. That people don't want to see human created images.
If I took a more optimistic, more positive view on it, I feel like the more AI generated stuff should make human made things worth more or valued better, valued more, however you want to look at it. But it's, you might be able to like I've seen some AI that looks perfect, like perfect photography, especially
totally.
Not so much landscapes yet, but a lot of portraiture stuff that makes me go, uh-oh, know.
I can see real threats for, say, product photography and maybe
or graphic design, or any of that sort of like that would normally be made by somebody, and the same deal. I have a buddy who's like
that creative aspect is gonna the handmade graphic design, the handmade sort of product shoot is probably at some risk. I doubt though necessarily that it's not gonna evaporate in the next 5 minutes.
But it's kind of like, I feel like Napster, or like, you remember back in the day when digital music came in, where it was like, oh God, the recording industry's
yeah,
done.
Well, photography's been dead for every year for the last.
When stock photography died, right? And then everybody was like, oh God, photography's dead. I understand that there is a bit of that. But the only issue is when if you look back at any of those things, large amounts of people lost their jobs for a very small amount of something. And this small amount of something happens to be like a robot. I'm overgeneralizing, but it's cool that people now have the ability to create more. I'm a big fan of creating, be creative, make things.
Yeah.
But it's also important, like I said earlier, about being honest and truthful with your work. And like, we need to differentiate, I think, when AI work is being used over lens-based work or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's my, I guess, again, semi-negative, pessimistic, optimistic viewpoint. I feel like in photography, I'm really interested to know overall how the photography industry is doing. The last 2 years for me, I've been mainly in Web3. So I put a lot of effort and energy there in this part of my photography path. And it's not always going to be like that. But I've also spent other time with teaching workshops and conferences and seeing the Instagram worlds. And now that I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram, I'm just kind of like, I wonder what the future is. I'm hoping workshops are doing well for people still. I think that's always going to be another one, is like, until we cannot go places, the future of photography is still the experience and sharing those experiences with people. But yeah, I feel like, it's interesting because I feel like 4 or 5 years ago, there was such an explosion of like photographers and people teaching and starting YouTube channels.
Absolutely.
Et cetera, right? And now I'm reflecting on it and I'm seeing, and you look at workshops, you look at like in like real world teaching scenarios, I'm seeing less younger people.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just me getting older because I used to be the younger person, but it's more like, I wonder if that's carrying through in the younger generations. Like, are new landscape photographers coming in? Like we have, there are always going to be attrition and there's always going to be younger people. Are they coming in on the right? Are they coming in with the right values?
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to be coming in carrying on this next steps of the industry and the next steps of nature photography? I have, again, lots of skepticism about that. It's even like Instagram. I've been noticing that everybody, there's a trend with Instagram of people zooming into planets on exact locations of places. Where like 3 or 4 years ago, we were like finally getting to a place where people stopped putting locations on things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what happened in like 2 years? Now it's popular again. Is it because like us old geezers aren't like shaming them constantly? Or I don't know. It's like, this is the hard parts. It's we give the world an opportunity to maybe breathe a second. And then as soon as it's done breathing, like we take more air from it. And that's a hard one. So I don't know. I feel like it's on the elders and the people who are, who have been here working and doing those things to like try to teach the young bucks how to, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm feeling old today. I'm sorry. Which I'm not that old, I swear. But, that's kind of where I'm at on the future of photography. I am excited about it. I still love it. And I still believe in people getting to experience the joy of photography. And like, I can only hope more people get to do it. But the experience, that's the thing that needs to stay with us. It's no computer can take that away. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that for me is where I see that passion that people have, like yourself and people like Guy Talent, etc. That's never going to go away, I don't think. And as long as people feel creative, want to get out there and experience the world and show it to other people, that'll always be there. As I say, there's probably some risks in other forms of photography potentially, but
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, we have a cool little bubble here, right? Like people who are like commissioned working all the time. This kind of goes back to earlier, like I was talking about being like amateur versus professional or full-time versus part-time. And like, I still don't know if I'd ever want to be full-time nature photography because it would take something away from that.
Yeah.
And I still think that, AI and all these other things might play a role in that, but it's important that like, nature, we're kind of lucky in nature photography that we're not have to deal with clients like any other photography form based.
Yeah. The trees and the waves and the rocks don't talk back, and don't
Exactly.
demand anything from you.
But they don't pay that well either.
No, that's exactly it.
So
Making money out of them is a challenge.
yeah, man.
If you could go back and talk to the 10 or 12-year-old Jordan, what would you tell him?
Buy Apple stock. I don't know. Geez. I think I would tell 12-year-old Jordan that you're gonna do what you want to do.
Yeah.
I've been blessed to be able to live a life that I'm like genuinely is like mine. Like, I'm doing what I love.
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate about it. I'm getting to do things that have like some of the events that I've worked on over the years have been so big that I can't even talk about them. I've been able to work on stages that I never would be able to play music on.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to visit and experience natural phenomenon that has blown my mind and been able to like, I would tell Jordan that it's going to be okay,
Yeah.
And yeah, buy Apple stock, buy Bitcoin, a whole bunch of it in 2000, whatever, 2011 or, I think of Back to the Future, but yeah, man, I'm lucky to say that I could say to Jordan, I'm 12 years old, that like, you're going to end up doing like the things you want to be doing, and just keep at it and it's going to be okay, man.
That's fantastic. Are there any photographers you think I should be talking to? Guy Tell's obviously one of them.
Yeah, I mean, any chance you get for him, man, he's great.
Yeah.
I love Guy Tell. I always love hearing from Alistair Ben. He's a great guy. Has he been on yours?
Yeah, he's
okay.
Yeah.
I got to look at your list, right? Because you got a pretty good list going for yourself.
I'm trying to build it. Yeah. I've also got a very long. I'll never run out of people to talk to.
Yeah, I'm sure, right? Like, I'm a really big fan of Ian Plant. Have you heard of him before?
I can't say I have. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a really creative guy, and he teaches. He's based in like North Dakota or something, but he's a pretty well-known photographer, great teacher. He's really big on composition.
Yep.
Another good person to reach out to would be like Michael Sadovsky. He's a buddy too in the Web3 space, Mind's Eye.
Yep.
He's got a really great style. Ruben Wu would be great. I mean, there's some people. I mean, there's so many great people, man.
All right. Well, I got one more question for you, and it's very much a topical issue for many photographers. Okay. You like pineapple on pizza?
Definitely. I love pineapple on pizza, and I'll fight that one to the death. I mean, who cares? And this is coming from, I grew up in New York. I'm somebody who could rightfully tell you that I've had the best pizza ever.
Okay.
And I know that is also pretty damn American and egotistical to say. But I'll tell you.
Have you been to Naples?
No, I have not. I have not. But pineapple on pizza works for me. I won't discriminate on things like that. The question is the water being used to make the bread?
Very much so.
That's the magic.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today, Jordan. It's been wonderful getting to know you a little bit better and finding out more about what you do and how
Grant,
you
man, I
work.
appreciate it. Yeah.
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 Where
Thanks,
can
man.
people find your work?
Oh, well, you can check me out at Jordan Inglee on pretty much all the socials. JordanInglee.com is a place you can find out more from me too. And I'm pretty active on Twitter, and it's kind of like the best place to reach out is Twitter right now. But
Okay.
if you're on Instagram, Jordan Inglee, I'm there, and like my DMs are open. So if you ever want to reach out, ask a question, complain, tell me my work is too something, you can do that.
tell you it's been photoshopped.
Yeah, it's been. Hey, your image was photoshopped. Yes, sir, it was. Yes, it was.
That's exactly my response. And then block.
Yeah.
All
Yeah, but
right.
again, Grant, thank you so much, man. It's good talking with you, and I appreciate what you're doing with your podcast, and it's really important. I think keeping, putting that content out isn't easy, so I can appreciate everything you're doing, and this really helps the photography community at large. So thank you too.
Thank you, Jordan, and thanks very much for taking the time to sit here and have a chat with me. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.